All right, everybody. Hey, how you doing? Johnny Torres here. Please bear with us. We're trying to do this show remotely here. We apologize for the intro there. Thank you so much. We hope you are doing well. We hope you're staying safe, staying healthy. This is your coronavirus edition. I would say we probably had two or three of these by now of the Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics, coming to you live from all over Tampa Bay, literally, as we are spread out doing the show remotely. We thank you so much for watching. Thanks to our friends over at BizPack Review, Conservative News Today, Tampa Bay Young Republicans. We've got a show full of stuff for you today and a usual cast of characters. We thank you so much for watching. Take this time to share the program if you don't mind so we can reach as many people as possible. Again, the coronavirus, the top issue, of course, as we now find ourselves quarantining here throughout the state of Florida on governor's orders. Unemployment issues, we'll discuss the issues that we're having here, especially in Florida, with people filing for unemployment, loan issues for small businesses, the rise of authoritarians, and of course, this is a worldwide pandemic, so how different countries are handling this issue, and then, of course, our own dealing with China. And how is this going to affect the relationship between us and China? One that's already been pretty rocky under the Trump administration. And then last but not least, some quarantine tips as to how everybody's been adjusting to this stay-at-home order from Governor DeSantis. Let's go ahead and turn over to the, well, not the table, because we're not at the studio today, but we do have our cast of characters. Let's see, Jake, Michelle, and Chris. How you doing, guys?
How's it going?
Doing the best we can. We're stuck in quarantine,
Glad we've
so
got all
this
the
is
tech
the
issues.
first time that we're gonna try and do the
I
show.
know.
Okay, so all right. So again, we're trying to
Hey
figure this out
everyone.
here. Hey, Michelle. Again, we got to get used to a little bit of the delay here, internet wise. But again, we're going to try to do this show for you tonight as we do every Monday night. Again, our top issue is the coronavirus. And guys, it's obviously we're trying to do this show remotely. It's affecting us not only in our personal projects, but also in our private lives, our professional lives. You know, what differences do you see here with what the governor laid out and what we had here at the local level?
Well, the as far as like what the governor's doing, again, he's taking a lot of flack in Florida. To be honest, I think that it's very unfair to him. DeSantis is doing a great job. Again, he's taking cues from the federal level. I think that Trump is doing, again, I think he's doing a fantastic job at handling at a federal level. I don't think we need like a sweeping reform, the same way that the Democrats seem like they're asking for right now. Right? It seems like they're trying to ask for a one size fits all solution for the entire country. And I think we all know that we're not New York and Florida, and we're not New York and Idaho, and we're not San Francisco and California and all those places. I mean, it's all different everywhere. So again, at the top of the at the food chain up at the federal level, I think that again we're doing pretty well. Again, everything that's it's a mess. I mean, you can't just possibly fix this situation, right? Like it's just not going to happen. It's there's a virus here. He's doing the best he can, and I think that Ron DeSantis is doing a great job. And to be honest, I think that the governors who did decide to shut down everything at the same time are probably facing some problems.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jake. We're trying to make this work here, and we have Chris, who's over, on the far end. And Chris, this has been an interesting situation for you as well. You've got someone in your household that works in the healthcare industry, and then, of course, you're also in a very kind of hands-on type of job in the type of work that you do. How is this affecting you so far?
All right, just got my my camera centered here. But so for me, I am very, very fortunate. I work for a European company, and I'm able to. I basically have had the last week off. I'll have the next 4 weeks off, and I'm paid for that. So I'm very, very fortunate in that behalf. However, I can't help but think that if I were in a position of some people I went to school with that have opened their own businesses and being in this business environment right now, just being out of income for 5 weeks or even longer. So it's very, very dangerous for some people in that aspect. This is a chance for people to go out of business forever. Things that they've spent 5, 7, 8, 10 years of their income trying to put together, and it's going to be gone in a blink of an eye. Not just because they're closed, but because their clientele can no longer afford to pay for their services. So I'm really critical of Ron DeSantis for shutting the whole state down for that reason. I mean, Wimauma or Dade City are not the same as Miami-Dade County or Tampa Bay, for that matter. We have some of the lowest per capita COVID rates for the entire country here in St. Pete and Tampa. I understand why.
Yeah, and I think Chris, the problem with that is that he's gotten so much. He's had so much opposition.
No, absolutely.
There's just nothing the governor. It feels like it feels like a lose-lose situation for anyone who's in office right now, because when they are trying desperately to keep their states open, the rest of the country is pressuring them so much to close down, and everyone is in a tough situation because they're trying to weigh between loss of lives and loss of jobs and loss of livelihood, and it's just, that's a very tough balance to strike. So I do not envy the people that are in positions of leadership, even though we do are going to critique them at times. And I do think it's imperative to remember that I think everyone is trying the best they can, even if we, of course, we have been critical, and we're going to continue to be critical because that's what we need to do. And we need to look at these public policy decisions with a very critical eye.
Well, that's been the thing. We had Democrats for so long criticizing Governor DeSantis for not stepping in, and these are the same Democrats in office that during session, they were complaining about how the state legislature and the executive branch of the state continues to take powers away from local government. Well, so far, the approach that I've seen from Governor DeSantis and from President Trump has been a bottom-up approach. Let the local governments decide how they need to handle this situation best, and people want to push.
But that's how it should be.
Exactly. And again, they seem to either not want to understand that or fail to understand that. And these local governments have been doing what they felt is right for their community, as they should. And they kept pressuring the president, kept pressuring the governor into coming down with the hammer and shutting everything down. And that's also not practical. And it's doing more damage, as we're seeing in New York City. Governor Cuomo himself said that he thinks that he shut everything down way too quickly, that he came down too hard right out of the gate. And we're going to start seeing that here in Florida as more people lose their jobs and we lose more businesses.
And I give Cuomo so much credit for being able to come out after the fact and say, maybe I was wrong, because we don't see that kind of, self-awareness and self-criticism from many of our leaders. They just, like to say, no, everything I did was fine. They don't want to admit wrongdoing. And I think especially in this situation, it is really important to hear someone like Cuomo, who had the idea of, if I can save one life, just one life, it's important. And now he's changing his tune, realizing that the economic loss may have been a bit unsubstantiated. So I really do applaud him for at least coming out and making that.
Yeah, I think he also realized that, this isn't something that could have been handled in a way that didn't involve just shutting everything down, right? I mean, again, they're still running the subways there. I don't know how many times we're going to have to keep coming on this every week after week and keep saying, they're still running subways. So, if you really want to get this under control, you actually take time and, identify the things where people are going to pass the virus on, right? They're going to pass the virus on the dirty subway and then the transportation systems and all these places. And what they're really seeing in New York, and why the reasons it's getting so bad there is that the housing market has been so, what's going to come out of this weeks from now or months from now, whenever this is all done, is they're going to evaluate the black market that they had for housing and rent and things like that, because they have people stacked on top of each other in apartments that don't exist on the books. And now they're all living together because they can't come out and actually say hey, we're in separate apartments and all that kind of thing. And so that's why Queens is the epicenter for this right now. And again, he hasn't shut down the pieces of the equation here that are actually going to solve the problem. And again, just shutting the entire economy down. Again, we're seeing what the effect that is on the entire world right now.
So again,
So
at
you
what
guys hit on a
point,
couple of
and is it even relevant? Sorry, Chris, we'll get to you in a second, but at what point,
Mhm.
or is it even worth discussing? Did we go too far? And is anybody gonna? Is
I
it
think we
even
can
worth making
tell.
that case?
We have to discuss that.
Because we've truly
Yeah, I
entered
mean,
into a
it's
recession. We're
yeah, it's
probably
something that
going
we've
to be
been.
into a depression at this point. Go ahead,
The
Jake.
economic loss that we're seeing right now it has been just absolutely astronomical. It is something that most economists could not have imagined us incurring in such a short amount of time, especially due to the government self-imposing this, that we've created this. And I mean, I remember a few weeks ago when Jake said 10 million jobs lost, we all looked at Jake and we're like, really, 10 million? And now he's definitely right already. And now there's going to be people that, that now we're looking at possibly 20 million.
20, 30 million, yeah.
Chris, you're going to make a point earlier. What were you going to say?
So
you're
I
talking about
guess
job loss, right? Oh, so you guys hit on a bunch of things here. We need a secret hand code to to cue who's going to talk. This is a little bit difficult to work with, but we'll figure it out. You guys hit on a bunch of things. As far as like the economics of coronavirus have become a complete taboo to talk about. No one, if you even remotely have a suggestion that maybe this drawback should be weighed against saving one life, the amount of money or resources willing to forego has never been infinite to save one life. This is something that has to be talked about. I've been berated by friends, enemies, people online, alike, everybody, for even discussing the idea that the amount of cash or resources we're paying out for each life is like 5 or 6 times as much we have at any point in the past. I did one calculation that had something to do with basically if you imagine the 330 million citizens of the United States, we're taking 6 productive weeks from their life. That's 45 days. That comes out to 40 million life years taken away from the United States as far as that goes. Now, if we imagine that we're saving 5 years from the average corona patient's life, 90% of their lives, then 5% we're saving 10 years of their life, and 1% we're saving or would be saving 40 years of their life. The ratio is like we're losing 40 million life years of the United States versus saving 2.5 million. So that's a very real calculation. That's got nothing to do with the economic part of it either. So these things have to be weighed. No one wants to talk about it. Why not?
Yeah, exactly, Chris. And I think that, again, like you said, it's been taboo to talk about the economic problems, right? Like why are we not able to say something about this? Like, I mean, we should be able to say, like, okay, we're shutting everything down. And I don't think that you can look at it so emotionally and say, okay, well, it's only, if it saves one person, it saves one person. I just don't think you can do that for the entire country of 300 million people. So again, like, as much flack as we get coming on the show the past few weeks and going in different places and saying like, okay, well, why don't we calculate multiple different things and then come up with, like, I don't know, a plan or like try and get metrics here for measuring what's going on. We've been taking a lot of heat for saying something like that, even from our own Republican Party.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for watching. This is the Yard Sign. We appreciate all our friends over at BizPack Review and Conservative News Today. Again, having to do the show remotely here, trying something a little different. It's not perfect, but we're going to get through this. We appreciate everybody. We're following the comments online. Sharon is in agreement that, we've gone too far, maybe in a lot of the restrictions and a lot of the things that have come back from the government, especially at the state level and at the city level, depending on where you live. And then Dina Thomas says, you all obviously haven't lost anyone you love, so which of you four are willing to die? Well, again, I think we're all doing our part to stay safe and to
Well,
to stay healthy. It's not, it's not about not doing what's right or not
I
following
have
the
a
what I'll
guidelines.
cousin
say
who
about
is
that, Johnny.
I have a cousin who's in the hospital fighting for his life due to coronavirus. I understand that there is a human toll. I think we all do, just because, just because we're talking about the economic issues doesn't mean that we are not empathetic to every person that's struggling in every family. We understand that if one person dies, that's not just something that can be thrown away. That is a person who has family, who has people are going to suffer at that loss of life. And that's tragic. That is truly tragic. But what no one wants to talk about, and this is something we have to address, is that people are going to die. Have already reached the point that it's going to happen. And it's not to say that we shouldn't try to save as many people as we can. We should. But we do need to acknowledge that maybe the way that we're going about trying to save people isn't the right approach. And that's why we need to be calm and measured when we talk about this, and not let too many of our emotions guide our decision making.
Well, and that's the main difference between, Republicans and Democrats, I think. And again, I'll say this again on this show because I think it's an important point that's getting across to people, is that this doesn't actually get your mindset probably has to do with your financial situation and your health situation. So depending on what, doesn't really matter what political party you belong to. If you're, again, older, maybe in poor health, maybe, or, in a perfectly fine financial situation, then you're looking at this going, we need to shut everything down, save everybody, save what we can. But if you're working, if you're younger, if you're not in a financial situation where you can comfortably go on after this, then you're probably saying look, we need to think about this because my entire life's getting ruined. And that's really where the dividing line is. Really, honestly, it's the complacency in life and the where you are in life and how comfortable you are.
Well, again, this has to be a balance, right, guys? Because yes, there's obviously an immense value, and a number you can't put a number on a personal life, but the depression and that we are literally walking right into economically is something that is going to affect our country for generations. This is going to be something that's not going to take a year or two to get out of. This is something that may take us 5, 10 years to get out of. And the generational damage that this is going to do economically to families, to individuals, is going to be devastating. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so let's talk about the.
So,
I was going to say, let's talk
in
about
regards
the economic
to
stuff,
what people have to say,
because
you're putting
right
cash
now
values.
you've got you. Sorry, Chris. I'm trying to get this delay down. The unemployment that's going on right now in this country, we hit on it a little bit at the beginning of this show, is past 10 million, which is what we were talking about last week. Now, I mean, we've skyrocketed past what anybody thought we possibly could get to. And when we said it on the show, people laughed at us. And again, I had to argue with Anibal last week on the numbers. So there's that piece of it, right? So now we have an unemployment system that is getting completely overrun as well. And not only is the 10 million people unemployed a problem, if everybody could even get unemployment, but now we're running into the issue where we have in Florida, we've got completely broken website, right? Like people can't actually even apply for the unemployment that they're trying to get. So if you're part of those 10 million people, your state's unemployment website may not even work. And then they can't go to paper right now. They're not processing it in the right way. And then we're also having the same problem on the solutions that we're proposing to get to small business owners and things like that. So like your grants and your Payroll Protection Act and all that kind of stuff, that was supposed to roll out on Friday. And guess what? Like Obamacare, every other big rollout of a government program, it doesn't work. So because of the fact that it doesn't work, now, again, the solutions we're providing to people and saying, hey, we're going to get you $1,200. We're going to get you unemployment. We're going to get you, your payroll protection. We're not getting any of those things. And because we're not getting any of those things, people are going to start freaking out. And it's not just that they're going to start freaking out in oh, let's, like we're struggling a little bit right now. Like, where's my cash? It's going to be like, people are worried about riots. People are worried about robbery. People are worried about like where this is going to go in a couple of weeks or months. If, again, if the government can't get its stuff together and actually provide for people, and then, again, and then protect yourself for what is to come, because I think we're all living in a very anxious and unsure time right now. And I think that again, a lot of the failures of the handling of this, again, from top down, I mean, like go straight up to the president and go down to your local city leader. I mean, it's been mishandled, and that's what you expect in a government response.
Chris, go ahead.
So in response to what one of our viewers had to say about putting a cash price in someone's life, so no, it's not just cash. So think about it this way. If you own a business, are you going to close down your business that you've invested $50,000 into in 5 years of your life? That's a quantifiable amount to save one person's life. Maybe you would. Now, would you ask everyone in your neighborhood to do the same thing? Would you close down 50 businesses to save one person's life? That's people's livelihoods. Would you not send your kid to college, spend all that money that you saved for your kid's college education to save one person's life? Okay, maybe you would do that one time, but would you do that for 5, 10 kids? Now those kids live at, they have minimum wage jobs for the rest of their lives because their opportunity to go to college is gone. I mean, this is not just economic. It's not just dollars. It's not just a stock market or a Wall Street trader's bank account. It's much more complex than that. It's not so simplistic.
Well, again, thank you everybody for watching. This is the Yard Sign.
Absolutely, Chris.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I was just going to say that he's absolutely right, that it is more, complex than I think a lot of people realize. I think people look at this the same way they looked at the 2008 recession, in which, that was, Wall Street bankers and, a lot of the big banks who were, the ones that were taking the money and the ones that caused a lot of that crisis. But in this case, it's, again, we have to remind everybody that this is the government that's causing the crisis. So this isn't like a voluntary shutdown. The government's causing this in one case. And then also the difference with 2008 is that, these are ordinary people that are being shut down. By and large, the bankers are still working. The super wealthy are fine. It's the people who are at the bottom. Your dishwashers, your fast food workers, like all of those employees that their hours have been cut. Even if they're able to work, their hours might have been cut, or they don't have jobs at all. And then you go to this, and then they're trying, especially in the state of Florida, they're trying to apply for unemployment, and they can't even get through because that system was designed. Rick Scott specifically designed that system to keep people from getting their benefits, but to keep as few Floridians who apply for unemployment from getting benefits.
Well, thank you again for watching The Yard Sign. It's the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Again, thanks to our friends at BizPack Review, Conservative News Today, and the Tampa Bay Young Republicans. We're doing, again, a bit of, obviously, the topic everybody's most concerned about, everybody's talking about, which is the coronavirus. We've touched on the employment issues that we're going through right now, especially here in Florida. We have Ken Lawson, who's now at the head of that agency and is taking it upon himself to see if we can get this website fixed and turn around. But that obviously takes time, takes a lot of resources that are very limited right now. And so they've actually gone to paper applications, and they've increased staff to do some of the processing of these applications. So we'll expect some of those unemployment issues to continue. But I can tell you, Ken Lawson actually is from the Tampa Bay area. He's somebody that really gets the job done. He was with the Rick Scott administration, now with the Governor DeSantis administration. He's a guy that can be relied on. He's somebody who I think we're in good hands with, and he's going to see this through to make sure that we can help people in the end as they come up on unemployment issues. But to Jake's point, The next couple weeks, the next 3 to 4 weeks are going to be scary as people's funds run out, and all of a sudden they're not able to provide for their families. And what does that look like? And when does that start to bleed into the crime, in the area? And what does that pressure look like, when you put it to test in our society? What are the other thing is loan issues on the business front. Jake, I know you're a small business owner. And have you gone through and applied for the small business loan yet?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about that process and what that looks like for your average small business owner. And again, I'm not talking about like small business owner in the sense of like 500 employees, which is the limit that they're calling a small business. I mean, if you have 500 employees, you're probably like a medium-sized business, right? So they're offering an awful lot of money, but I have a lot of concerns with how they're handling it all, right? Because they're basically just saying, hey, you can apply anywhere between, like 1 employee to 500 employees, and saying up to $10 million in payroll protection, right, over the next 2 months. So that's a lot of money. And the page, the actual sheet that you have to fill out is 4 pages long, and they don't really ask any documents. That's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. I think there's going to be, when this is all said and done, they're going to have a really hard time verifying things. There's going to be a lot of like fraud along the way. There's going to be, and not only that, it's going to be delayed. Again, this was supposed to roll out on Friday, and then every big bank was like, we're not actually ready Friday. And the money was supposed to be available that day, actually, but it's not available that day. It's available who knows when. I'm still waiting on Chase Bank to call me back. Like I'm somewhere in their million-person queue. But really the biggest problem is, again, like the government's going to hand out all these loans, and then they don't actually collect on them for 6 months to maybe 8 weeks or something like that. And then all of a sudden, like, again, shut down. So now they've just handed out possibly hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to businesses that are shutting down, which again is caused by the government. So I mean, at least like maybe the business can salvage what it can, but I have a lot of worry about the rollout and implementation of this, which again, it's done without any sort of planning. And it's kind of goes to what's happened in the unemployment website as well. It's the same type of issues. So Johnny, I don't know if you wanted to touch on any of the other pieces that you're seeing out there. I mean, like, from like, again, they talk about the $1,200 that everyone's supposed to be getting if you're applying, or the $500 for your kids. That's not coming in everyone's pockets as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the thing is, especially on the loan front with the businesses, I mean, this is money that, at least what's kind of being heard and said in the community, is that this is money that the government's never going to get back. They may try to go after some of this money, but some of these people are just going to take that money, I think, and try to stretch out a few more days of business and probably call it a day, because I don't see a lot of businesses making it through another month and a half of this, which is, again, what I'm projecting, at least based on what I've read, what I'm hearing, that we have to go
easily, yeah.
in this. Yeah. And so on the personal side, again, we may get that $1,200 check. Well, I'll tell you, that $1,200 check, in my personal situation, we live in one of the more affordable parts of Florida, that barely covers your rent, if it covers it at all. And then what about all your other expenses, and your food, and your daycare, and your things like that, and or your car payment, your insurance payment. I had those come out automatically out of my bank account, and those are things that people forget, because, we've automated our bank accounts to take that money out, and all of a sudden you realize there's no money coming in to replace it, and what do you do at that point? So this is going to get pretty ugly, I think, in the next couple of weeks, as you said, and it's going to cause a whole nother myriad of issues nationally, as, again, people start to feel the belt tightening economically. I mean, it's one thing to be staying home right now, but it's a whole nother thing to just see that bank account dwindle and dwindle till it gets to zero, and then what are you supposed to do? All right. Thank you again to everybody for watching. We appreciate you sticking through the little bit of technical issues here and there that we're working through. We're still getting used to the delay here, as we're all doing the show remotely today. Rise of Authoritarians. And if you've been watching this outside of the United States, well, there's certainly people that are accusing Trump of being authoritarian, but then again, those are the same people saying he's not doing enough, so I cancel those people out immediately. But You look at what's happening in the Philippines, you look at what's happening in other countries, even as close as Brazil, and it's interesting to see how all these countries are dealing with. You're seeing public lashings. You're seeing, police get incredibly aggressive with their citizens, and even here, there is a concern over our loss of rights, and and how different is the United States going to look after this? I mean, we've been through this after 9/11. We lost a lot of rights in terms of privacy. And there was a lot of government espionage happening of private citizens. What is the United States and other countries going to look like after this virus? Jake, what so far? What country out there has been the one that's gotten the most attention from you?
Well, I mean, all of them really. It's really bad out there. Like if the reason why sometimes we sit here as conservatives and as libertarians and we start to warn people about like the dangers of giving into any one of the rights that we're starting to give into, right? Like your freedom of assembly, your freedom of speech, like your ability to walk around, your ability to paddleboard, maybe or do a hold a congregation at your church. Like the reason why Republicans and libertarians fight back on these things is because once they're gone, and there is a level. You can see it on the different levels of all of the governments that we're watching around the country, around the world right now, right? So again, like you kind of mentioned, like so in Russia, you have to give a note to the government to tell them why you're going outside. Okay, we're like this close because if you have to start giving people reasons for why you're leaving, again, they're stopping people at parks for running, they're stopping paddle boarders for being out at the beach, right? I mean, like all of those type of things. Like again, we're this close from that, and there's a reason why we're trying to stick up for the fundamental rights we have, despite understanding the public health issue. Like right, like I don't want to get lost on that at all. Like everything that I'm saying right now, like we fully understand what is happening from a public health issue, and we know that the virus needs to be taken seriously and how we handle it. But again, we have to be very careful to tread lightly, or else we're going to end up as one of these other countries. And again, in Brazil. Their leader is using it as an excuse to take power. And that is really what you're starting to see around the entire world, right? Like, I mean, Hungary is a great example. If you want to go listen to the New York Times talks a little bit about it, the prime minister of Hungary has basically expanded all of his power in basically calling it a public health crisis. He's, taken away their democracy. I think he's canceled the elections, things like that. I've seen videos of people in Tunisia getting yelled at by robots to get back inside, right? Like they're using drones in New York City. I think BizPac had an article about that just today or yesterday to tell them to get back inside. And so you have that, and then you go to the more extremes, right? Then you have Philippines right now. I mean, he already was killing people for doing illegal things, right? He had no concern for shooting people dead in the streets. I mean, what's going on in the Philippines is as much of a authoritarian regime as you possibly can have. And right now, he's basically said, yeah, if you're outside, we're just going to shoot you down. I mean, again, that's the far end of the spectrum, but we're not that far. And then you take China, which I want to get into more and more after this part of the conversation. But again, communist regime, they're hiding all of this stuff. They're not allowing journalists in. They're not allowing the press in. They're not answering questions. They're lying to the WHO and these other organizations. They basically own the WHO as a communist propaganda machine. And like all of these different things are happening around the world right now. And so from my standpoint, like I'm afraid of what ends up happening at the end of this, not just because of the United States is shut down and our economy is hurt. The United States' economy is down, it's hurt, we're not in a good position to go out and fight wars or influence what's going on outside of the world. And again, all of these people who are already in authoritarian positions are expanding their power, and there's power grabs happening in almost every other country that you can imagine this would happen in. And I encourage people to go up and look into like what I'm talking about here, like start to read about like what is happening in Brazil. Like I saw people from Brazil commenting on our statuses being like, oh my God, you should see what the governor of this province is doing. They're, it's so corrupt. They won't even they're just going to lock us up for being outside. I mean, there's people like social media. What the great thing about it is that we get comments from people around the globe who let us know what it's like right now over there. And it's not pretty. It's really not pretty. Yeah. So I don't know, Michelle, if you want to talk at all a little bit more about it, because I know you've been looking at it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been looking across the globe and, to a lot, the issues in, Brazil, Hungary, where they have expanded, where the presidents of those nations have expanded their powers to become authoritarian is so concerning. And that's something that when Trump came into office, every liberal was saying, oh, that Trump's going to become, an authoritarian. He's going to become a dictator. Just watch, just you wait and see. And so far, this is Trump's biggest opportunity if he was going to have a power grab. He has resisted every call by liberals. Remind, called, like they are asking him to step in and really overstep a lot of our civil liberties in the name of public health, which again, we recognize that public health is very important and it's very urgent right now, but we do need to make sure we're not overstepping those civil liberties. And for the fact that Trump hasn't done that, I think goes to show, one, that he's more measured, at least in that respect, than many thought he would be. And two, that the United States has the greatest institutions in the world, that they protect even from, as many liberals would say, a madman like Trump. Well, if he's as crazy as you say, at least we have the institutions that are protecting him from having that sort of power grab. And my big concern is that if a liberal were to be in power right now, they, with all the calls that I've been hearing for shut everything down, expand socialized medicine, what would occur is, you would start to see those rights just being grabbed and grabbed and grabbed.
All right, it looks like we're having a little bit of a video issue, but we could hear you just fine, Michelle. Thank you for that point. There we go. Now we got you back. Chris, you're even, I think, a little bit stricter. You're a little bit more kind of passionate about this issue. You were, certainly one of the early people to speak up and saying, hey, we're already going too far in a lot of the measures that were being implemented. As far as what you're seeing here, what you're seeing overseas, what concerns you the most?
So a couple of things. As far as the citizenry at large, we've had people see these videos of authoritarians in Brazil, in the Philippines, in Hong Kong, and they're like, oh, well, we should be doing that here because you're putting the public at so much danger from being outside, going for a run, or not social distancing properly at the grocery store, that you should be beaten in the streets for that. And these were sincere people, and I was disgusted at that. So that really concerns me, that the small amount of panic that should be here, the small amount of fear we should have, is turning into something very, very serious. On a local level, what I've seen a lot of is, like Mayor Rick Kreisman closing businesses down. FWC is putting some pretty severe restrictions on boats. You have all the local counties closing down boat ramps for people. There'll be people gathered at sandbars. And so after you see at some point put in a restriction where your boat has to be 50 feet from another boat. So if you think about that, when you're at the grocery store next to someone at Publix, you can be 6 feet apart, but your boat has to be parked 50 feet away. It makes zero sense. And actually, if you'll review some of the comments I made in the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, they made a video describing how far your boat should be away. I made a little bit of a computer-aided video, and the boats they showed were 100 feet apart. So this is a concern to me, because you have people at the Pinellas County Commission who are trying to shut down the sandbars and shut down the boat ramps. And they're expecting the boats to be this far apart when the regulation is only this far apart. And that's also what people are referring to when they're calling the police on people for being too close together on a boat. I mean, it's really concerning that we have these overblown measures and they're being overblown even further.
Well, it's been interesting to see the stark contrast between states like New York and California, seeing the measures they've taken and then seeing the more red states, and in contrast, the measures that they've taken. And again, Jake kind of happened to mention in passing, the wakeboarder, the paddleboarder that was arrested out on the West Coast, out there in the ocean, all by himself, social distancing at its finest. And he had the whatever the local cops were there pull up to him on a boat and force him to go on the shore and be arrested for not following the stay-at-home order, which, according to what I read, included recreational activity, but somehow this guy got in trouble for being out in the water. Makes no sense whatsoever, but it also goes to show you how quickly people are willing to relinquish their rights in an effort to, at least give themselves peace of mind that they are going to be safer for it.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to talk about here
So
that
to
I think is
compound
a
on what
really
Michelle said,
important point to remember in all this is that, again, like sorry, Chris, I'm gonna jump over you. Sorry for the delay there. There are unintended consequences for the policies that we're putting in place, because everyone right now is looking around and saying, like, okay, just shut everything down, and they're not thinking about, like, well, what, when you pull one lever, it moves two other levers over here, right? Too, like, you can't do one thing and it not affect the other ones. So a great example of this, and I want to bring this up because I saw it in I think the Tampa Bay Times broke this story. The whole reason we're doing this, like, if we used to take a step back, the whole reason why we're doing social distancing, the reason why we're quarantining ourselves, is so that we flatten the curve and we save hospitals resources, right? Like, that's the theory that's overwhelmingly the common knowledge now around the country, right? Well, if you look at what's actually happening, you have a hospital in Sarasota that is laying people off right now because they don't have any money coming in because of the elective surgeries. And I think that that's, like, incredible and mind-blowing. I don't think anybody was paying any attention to, like, okay, well, if you tell people they can't have elective surgeries anymore, that now the hospital doesn't have enough money to operate, well, where's that going to come from? And so, again, if our ultimate goal here is to increase hospital resources so that they can actually handle the amount of influx of sick patients, then we need to be concerned on, like, okay, well, what are we doing here if hospital staff is getting laid off? Like, what happens if you tell everybody in the country they can't have elective surgery? Now you have all these different medical facilities shutting down, and you have doctors shutting down and nurses leaving, and they're all leaving to go to New York to handle it there, but they have to come back. I mean, like, it's just, there's such little planning. And again, like, when you make a policy, it affects policy in all kinds of different places. And I expect that there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences from what we're doing that nobody is pointing out right now. And I think that maybe, again, like, shutting down hospitals because they can't afford to stay open might be an unintended consequence, because we're already starting to see it with layoffs in Sarasota. So, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off, so I'll let you chime in on that part.
No, thank you. Sorry, it's just the tech stuff is. Anyway, to compound on what Michelle said,
Sure,
regarding Trump, grabbing power. This is not. I see Democrats wanting him to grab power from the states and issue an executive order to shut the entire country down, without thinking of the long-term consequences. So first of all, that opens up a precedent. This is a play that can be used in the future. You don't want to, as Republicans, we don't want to enable anybody to have a tool that we don't want to use against us in the future. So think about it this way, Democrats. Do you want President Trump to make New York, New Jersey, and California gun-friendly states? No, this is not what you want to do, and this is not what you want to ask for this tool to be opened up. And it's really, like, I've seen other people say in the past, so the president is this despot, this dangerous figure, this fascist. And this is a plain example of him not being a fascist. And to further what you were saying as far as hospital employees, we have a couple of hospital employees in our group, in our Tampa Bay and Republican group. And we've seen the hospitals be at 40% capacity in Tampa, in Brandon, in Sarasota, other hospitals in St. Petersburg. These hospitals are cutting hours, So is this really what we want to do? Is this the best use of our resources, to have our hospitals empty because we have everyone shut down at home? It doesn't make sense to me as far as keeping the disease in check. It seems like we're wasting time. Like, we have all this resources that are not being used as far as being able to treat these COVID patients. What do you think about that?
Well, again, it's one of these things where it's a balance. It's got to be a balance, and part of what we're talking about with these hospitals going out of business is the reason why Congress passed this $2 trillion stimulus package. Okay, and then people are saying, okay, well, where did that money go? Obviously, it became a pork bill. Some of that money went to places where it shouldn't have gone. Okay, let's just take that off the table for now because that's not what we're talking about. But when you talk about the money going to hospitals, the money going to some of these pharmaceutical companies, the money going to some of these corporations, people are like, why not give that money straight to the people? Well, you give that money straight to the people, and obviously a lot of that money is also going to the American people. But if they don't have a company to come back to, then what good does that do? If they don't have if these companies aren't able to stay operational because they don't have the revenue coming in, then again, if they're working on the cure, the vaccine, the test, then what good does that do us if they go out of business? If these hospitals go out of business and this thing drags on longer than we already expect, what good does that do us? One of the things that we are not going to have a problem with unless this continues to, in terms of hospitals shutting down due to a lack of revenue, is what we saw in Italy. That because they have a single payer system, they have basically a socialized form of medicine and healthcare, that they didn't have sufficient hospitals and clinics for everybody. Now here, we're fortunate that if you go enough in one direction or the other, you're eventually going to hit a hospital. And again, that's why the government needs to prop up these hospitals, at least through this pandemic, and then see where they stand afterwards and see if they're able to make it on their own afterwards.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing right now across the I guess the ethos of the country is that there's this overwhelming feeling that we should be listening to our leaders, right? We should be listening to people at the WHO. We should be listening to people at the CDC. Well, what's happened over the past week is that they've really eroded the trust in the American people, right? It comes to simple stuff, right? It comes to simple stuff like telling people for weeks they were saying masks don't help you, right? They're saying oh, you don't need to wear masks, but really they're just doing it so that doctors could buy masks, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, just a couple days ago, oh, well, actually masks do help you. Everyone, it's our recommendation that you do. So when you do something like that, so simple as a mask helping you or not helping you, and then now there's even fights in the scientific community over whether tying a bandana around your face helps. That erodes the trust in the people who are supposed to be helping us here, right? So again, it's just from all the way down here, right, on our podcast, I'm looking at this and just going gosh, can we not come up with a concise plan here, some form of organization here? Can we not it's just the distrust in government was already here on our side. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting from I'm going to credit DC Drano on this on Instagram, because he posted about how people have been reaching out to him and saying that, hey man, have you seen this video about the government doing this and the corruption that's happening here and the corruption that's happening here? And he's like, yeah, of course. Have you not seen any of this stuff for years? And it's because people are actually home on the internet and they're sitting on the internet and reading, great news publications like BizPack or Conservative News Today, or, they're going on to, maybe say it's Reddit or wherever it may be that's not a mainstream news source. They're getting more news and they're getting more information that isn't given directly to you through, again, your three channels on cable news. So I think that there's going to be a lot of social and societal effects of this, and we can probably dive into those for a long time in a future show. But I do want to jump us to our next topic and kind of get into how we respond to this. We touched on the authoritarians that are starting to pop up around the rest of the country, around the rest of the world. And, what is America going to end up doing at the end of this? Because right now everyone is so hyper-focused on let's figure out this disease for 15 days, let's figure out this disease for 30 days, that they're not paying attention to what's going on around the world around them, right? What's happening in China right now is absolutely awful. And I know Michelle wanted to talk a little bit more about what China is doing currently, and then we can kind of get into what the response is going to be.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, I've been following the Uyghur situation in China for a while. If you don't know, the Chinese have been placing the Uyghurs, which it's spelled UIGHR, for those of you who don't know, so you can research this. They are a Muslim minority group in China who has been being put in concentration camps for over the past several years now. Currently, there are over 1 million Uyghurs that are living in concentration camps. Like, they are called, reformation schools, where they are trying to essentially beat the Muslim out of them, because in China, if you remember, religion is illegal and they view them as a threat to the Chinese Communist government. And so right now there were 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. And in the few weeks before the coronavirus started, there had been a lot of reports starting to kind of come to the surface about what happens in these concentration camps and the horrible tortures and abuses, like human rights abuses, that these people are suffering. And then following the virus, I'm not going to speculate on who caused the virus or how it got out. But now that the virus is out, China is reporting their own death numbers. No one is talking about what's going on with the Uyghurs right now. I don't even hear about anyone looking for the Uyghurs and asking, are they okay? Are they still alive? Because when people are put in concentration camps, the next logical thing that happens from what we've seen in the past tends to be mass executions. And they did have graves that you could see from space around those concentration camps. So it's really alarming to me that no one is asking these questions of China, that when journalists are there and when reporters are there, they're not asking, how is your Uyghur population? What were your numbers before and what are your numbers now? Because China right now could be committing a mass genocide without anyone even bothering to know or care. And this is really concerning for me. And of course, I don't want to see us go to war with China at all. That is not something that we want to see or we would want to happen. But the world needs to ask these tough questions. And we can't just allow China to they were already committing human rights abuses without the world really saying much to them. So we need to make sure that people are not being slaughtered like cattle.
Yeah, well, Michelle brings up a great point, and again, that's an issue that people are obviously forgetting about. And again, even going on behind the scenes, and something that barely made the radar was obviously, the Justice Department has indicted Nicolas Maduro down in Venezuela with drug trafficking, and there's now officially a warrant for his capture and that sort of thing. And so to bring it back to China, the truth is that is just one small piece of a huge puzzle, because I think our relationship from China changes as of now, and I don't think it will ever be the same. And we're talking about going back to an America first, as the president
and it shouldn't,
promised.
Johnny.
Yeah, as an America first economy where we're manufacturing again, and we take back our place as not only a consuming nation but also a producing nation.
Yeah, I think that, again, I kind of want to expound on what Michelle is talking about here, because I want people to kind of understand the seriousness of the situation over there. Because again, everyone's been so hyper focused on what's happening with the virus, and the more and more reporting that gets out, because again, there's not a lot of reporting getting out because of the fact that, again, China's banned journalists. They've banned people from coming in and asking questions. They've already, been very tight around that because they have a communist regime over there. But right now, they're not letting anybody in the country to do reporting. And again, if you are trying to whistleblow or leak any information, then, again, you're probably getting slaughtered in one of these mass graves as well. So the point that I want to make is that, again, the more that has come out from, again, social media and reports online is that, the virus very well could have come from a bat, but right now they're starting to trace it more and more back to the labs in Wuhan, the biochemical labs that they have over there, right? And whether it was accidentally released or it was purposely released, right? It looks like it has to do with this lab that they have over there, right? So because of that, again, back to Michelle's point, if you have whether it's Chernobyl where it just blew up in your face and now there's millions of people that are infected with this and now the rest of the world has to deal with it, or it was done purposefully so that, again, they can commit mass slaughter while everybody else is dealing with their own population crisis because of the fact that there's a virus released. And the reason why we're kind of basing this argument off of something is that, while China, everyone knows that China's been lying about their numbers, but like we just kind of like all seem to brush it off. But they're saying that, again, no new corona cases right now, or 4,000 deaths. Like, are you kidding me? The reports coming out of Wuhan right now are that there are 4 or 6 crematoriums that are just running around the clock. And then if you go online, you can figure out, like, okay, well, if they're running around the clock, like, how many people are actually dying here and actually being cremated? And they're running these crematoriums just, again, nonstop. We're looking at like 40,000 deaths, like possibly in a week. And it's, again, like, if you're committing a mass genocide, like, this is how you would, I'm going to phrase myself very carefully here, but this is how you would distract the rest of the world while you covered up for the fact that you're committing mass genocide. And I don't know if that's what ends up coming out of this in a couple months or a couple years, but there's a chance that, again, we're not getting involved and the world isn't paying attention. There's no microscope over them because, again, everyone's busy with this virus right now. So now, again, to Johnny's point, how do we respond? What do we do? Well, you end up moving, manufacturing back here. They're going to end up being a loser in that situation, right? I mean, again, we should be asking them too for reparations, basically, for the rest of the world based on the fact that they lied for so many months. And it needs to be a strong-handed response here. And I think Trump's definitely the person to do it, right? Like, he's not going to let China off the hook. He hasn't been doing it for years, so I wouldn't expect it now. So again, we have to be very careful. It's a international incident that could throw us into World War III, but it's something that needs to be looked at because for the same reasons that World War II started, that there was a Holocaust going on, there very well might be a Holocaust going on in China right now as well.
Chris, did you want to jump in here on this? It's obviously a very deep issue.
Let's remember real quick. Oh, I was just going to add one quick thing, and that's, let's remember that World War II wasn't actually started because of the Holocaust. World War II was started because of Germany's expansion around the rest of the world. The Holocaust was committed under the cover of war. So it's important to remember that genocides are committed under the cover of war. And if this coronavirus is the current war that we are facing, it's, that's a prime situation for something like this to happen. And Chris, if you'd like to go ahead, sorry.
I've watched. Yeah, no worries. I've been watching the press conference for the last few days, and the media has been putting up pressure on Trump to ask, how the relationship with China is, and he seems to be giving a lot of thought to keeping a good relationship with China, which kind of worries me because I don't think it's the best move right now. I think that we need to be very serious and stern with them, but either he has some kind of value for them as far as the resources they're giving us, or we need information from them, or the stability of the trade markets. We saw a lot of instability a couple months back when we were having the trade war with China. I think that we're afraid of doing that again, maybe for economic purposes, but I do think there has to be some very serious consequences, and I hope Trump doesn't go easy on them. I really can't figure out why he's being so easy
China
on the press
holds our debt. Those trillions in dollars in debt.
Well, I think that's part of it, you guys, and I think the other thing is too our leniency with them in when it comes to the economy and manufacturing. The fact is that we are truly, and I'm not overstating this, we are truly at their mercy. We are beholden to them for manufacturing, not only medical equipment. All this medical equipment that we're asking people to make, and that we're hoping that 3M brings over here, and all this kind of stuff. A good majority of our medical equipment that we need right now is actually manufactured in China. A good deal of the pharmaceuticals that we consume as a country are made in China.
Johnny, I want to touch on that just a second too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about 3M, and I want to talk about these masks and everything that are coming from China, because one of the dominoes that's going to fall after this is all said and done is that 3M is going to just it is going to face a lot of heat that they already are currently facing, because if you don't really understand what's going on there, but their distribution system is actually like a third-party distribution system where like our states are currently making orders to people that are in countries with no guarantee that that medical equipment is going to show up, and then they have to start leaving deposits for the medical equipment before they know it's going to come back. And because everyone's in a panic right now, we have states buying millions and millions of dollars worth of medical equipment that they don't know is going to even show up. I mean, Ron DeSantis came out and said, like, his quote was, "It is shady as hell." And if that is the structure of your business model, is that, if you're going to order, medical supplies, like things that are going to save lives, is that, and our governors are saying, like, we can't even do business with these people because of the way that they do it. Like, again, they're going to face a lot of repercussions. China's going to face a lot of repercussions because, again, they've been shipping out faulty medical equipment. You see them shipping stuff to the UK that doesn't work. They found tests that were supposed to be test for the coronavirus that are actually tested positive for the coronavirus. So it's like you can't trust anything that's coming out of these countries, and then you also can't trust the supply chain that also exists within these medical supplies. And again, I think, like, to your point, we're going to end up seeing a lot more of that manufacturing move back to the United States in the future. But right now, it doesn't really help us.
Well, Jake, to that point, we are literally asking the country that has poisoned us, the country that has infected us with this virus, to get us out of this very problem. And again, given what we're dealing with in this country, it's hard enough for us to be able to produce the products and the produce and all the things that we do. It's been hard enough for this country to stay running. And these guys are over there, they're not following, the health code and whatever the CDC and the WHO, decides that needs to be implemented. They're probably running like normal, whether people are infected or not. And like you said, that the fact that these test kits are infected, I think, is just the top of the mountain. I think we need to look at everything that's coming from China to make sure that it's not infected, because that's only going to prolong this virus. And it's obviously that they don't care. They've been infecting our food, our toys, our products for years with all types of chemicals, because they're always looking to cut corners. Michelle, you want to jump in?
Yeah, we never, when they had done that previously, we just had always let it go because, it's okay, well, we're getting the products cheaper, so we understand that things happen. They're trying to push costs down. Sorry, this is, oh gosh.
Oh.
I apologize, my phone fell. Yeah, but no, so China has had, So China has had a lot of issues for a long time with their manufacturing, and our relationship with them has pretty much been, we let China get away with anything that they want so long as they keep costs incredibly low. And we can't do that anymore. We, as a global economy, need to pressure China to not stand for, to not allow, when if a virus does break out, which I already don't think that they should be allowed to even have these open markets because they're so unsanitary, but if they are going to do that and a virus breaks out, the response should be swift to that, and they shouldn't be sending us faulty equipment. And we as a global economy absolutely cannot, we can't allow China to just get away with whatever they want, because quite frankly, they use slave labor, and so their labor is so cheap, pretty much non-existent. And we're willing to just get our goods very cheap. I think that maybe in the future, you see the cost of things like iPhones and shoes and clothes start to go up because the manufacturing gets moved back to the United States or other nations that are willing to follow our guidelines, because it's not necessarily going to come back to the US. There are other countries like Thailand and Singapore and India that may be willing to follow, the recommendations that we need. Yeah. And I think something that would be interesting that we could ask for from China is, I don't think they will ever cancel all of our debt, but perhaps some of it. It's something that we should be pushing for as a part of a reparations plan.
I think there definitely needs to be some sort of financial compensation on behalf of the Chinese government. Obviously, the question is going to be how would that be enforced or how would that be negotiated? But there's no doubt when you're talking about the fact that the virus originated in China, our medical products are originating from China, our pharmaceutical products are originating from China, in addition to everything else you just mentioned, right? Clothing, toys, electronics. We are way too dependent on this country for our livelihoods, and I think it only benefits the United States and really the world at large to take some of that manufacturing power back from them because they obviously can't be trusted, and we've known this for a long time. Chris, you want to jump in?
So regarding how we're handling China, how we're handling their, I guess this is almost like belligerence as far as like military goes, but they would not give us samples of of the virus to do work with. So this is something I had an argument earlier today about is why the U.S. has such a big lag in response. So this was happening in late November and December in China, and because they had this outbreak and they're covering it up, that delayed our ability to respond swiftly. On top of that, once it was revealed they had this big outbreak going on, they would not send us copies of the virus to produce test kits or to produce vaccines with. And it's almost like, to me, the time between when we found out and we actually had samples of the virus we got from ourselves, from our patient zero in the US, the time between when we had patient zero and had response, it's pretty much the same amount of time. If we would have actually had the samples to prepare ahead of time, maybe a month ahead of time, we would be in much better shape in the US. This wouldn't cost us as much money, as much lives, and this is something very serious we have to look at in the future. Like, how do we police this? Does the WHO do a better job of policing this? Do we, as the United States, put spies in the U.S. to watch out for this kind of thing? I mean, what do we do? I mean,
well, Chris, to chime in there,
better mechanism in the future to prevent this from happening.
One thing I want to say about that, I think, like you said, I mean, we're supposed to have these global organizations that where the world comes together, and we have the United Nations, right? Like that's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what they're supposed to be doing at the WHO as well, the World Health Organization. But again, when the WHO is basically an extension of the Chinese Communist government, I mean, you can't rely on these people. Again, the China just look back 10 minutes ago when we talked about the concentration camps that they're currently running in China, right? They just got a seat on the UN Security Council, and the UN they shouldn't be a part of the UN. I mean, like the UN has already been a joke. But it started out with the best of intentions, but we're going to basically need to scrap the UN right now and scrap the WHO and start putting it with people who are there actually working for global good and not extensions of a Chinese Communist government.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Again, we got to keep our eye on not only what's happening here in the United States, but also what's happening abroad. And that was a great idea to kind of continue to pick apart China and bring that to the forefront, hopefully, because there will be a congressional hearing, investigation into how this was handled, and as I said, it's going to change this country going forward. Hopefully, I think there will be some measures, and I'm positive in saying that I think under a Trump administration, we'll see some measures implemented to reduce our reliance on China, and we should. It's the right thing to do, and again, there should be quite a bit of funds that are given to us by the Chinese government in reparations, I guess, for lack of a better term, for putting us through this. Thank you again for watching. This is The Yard Sign. It's the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Again, thanks to our friends at BizPac Review. Go see them for the latest stories on not only coronavirus, but national, state politics. All right, BizPac Review. Look them up, as well as Conservative News Today. We thank them for carrying the show, and we thank everybody for watching. I've been looking down here at our comment section. Thank you to Devine, who's been very active. Sue Lynn. We had, let's see, somebody was, there you go, Ronnie, watching from Missouri, and then David Cuskavage. Thank you guys so much for your activeness, your engagement there in our comment section. We're going to end the show today on quarantine tips. Again, we're trying to not to drive each other crazy, but of course still follow the guidelines that have been implemented for us, for our own safety, for our own health. And so, other than binging Netflix as much as possible, what have you guys been doing in this situation?
I've been doing a lot of TikToks lately because I've always liked to dance, and it's something that I can do with my younger niece and some of my friends, that are locked up in their apartments too. So it's actually become a really like fun, family activity.
I think we're seeing what Chris has been up to. What do you got there, Chris?
This is actually a gift I got for my birthday from Ashley. This is a Old Forester. This is a barrel pick from The Other Guys, which is a whiskey organization in Tampa Bay. This is actually one of the best bourbons I've ever had. For the money, it's a super great buy. Anyway, we've been drinking a whole hell of a lot more around this house because we're bored. There's nothing else to do.
Now, Jake, you're a pretty active guy. How have you been staying busy and staying sane during all this?
Yeah, this is tough for me, Johnny. I mean, I travel a lot of the year. I move around a lot. I can't sit in my chair too long. So this has been tough for me. That's probably why the mayor keeps telling me to stay at home. But I don't really listen all that well. When people are talking to me about are you willing to die for this and everything like that, like I've still been going out every day. Like I'm keeping my social distancing, I'm keeping my my 6 feet away from everybody, I'm doing all of those things, I'm staying safe, I'm using hand sanitizer and everything like that. But you know what, like I might be sneaking onto a trail every so often to go out and walk around, because I think that it's really important that you do get out in nature at least a few times a week. Like I think it's important to go take a walk at a park or take a walk at the beach. So again, I haven't got a ticket yet. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But I'm trying to get outdoors because again, like this virus is out there, but it's not like the sun gives it to you, right? Like you can get outside, like see the sun, get some vitamin D, take all the precautions you need to take. But again, like you can leave your house and actually see some things. I also do want to give a shout out to our apartment complex here, Varela West Shore. They put on a concert out in the area around all of our buildings where a guy played guitar, and everyone came out from their balconies and watched him. So I've been seeing more and more of that, like people playing
His
music
name
from
was
their
Seth
balconies,
Campbell.
and the rest of the complex enjoying that. So that's yeah. So other than that, my biggest piece of advice, things I want to leave you to stay sane. Again, I hope you're moving your business to the digital world. I'm seeing a lot of my friends who are in the entrepreneur world and the digital marketing world, like they're tweaking their offers and their businesses so that they can do business online. If you weren't doing it already, like that's what all of your focus should be. Like if you've been laid off, if you've been your hours adjusted at work or anything like that, like this is the time to start a business. This is the time to start an e-commerce business. Like we've launched quite a few, sales funnels basically over the past few weeks, and it's amazing how much revenue is being driven online right now. And the fact that these people are able to stay in business is because of the fact that they've adapted to online. So that's what I encourage you guys to do in the time that you have in, other than just drink and do TikToks.
All right. Well, thank you, Jake, Michelle, Chris.
You were enjoying doing TikToks too.
Oh, she's calling you out, Jake.
I have one TikTok.
I only know she called you out because I've been going from here to the couch and back. That's been my trajectory for the most part. But certainly take this opportunity, to develop a new skill, to learn a new language. I mean, there's no excuses, right? Even when it comes to working out, and I'm kind of saying that to myself too, because that's something I could be doing. We could all be working out at home. There's plenty of videos online where they can teach you exactly how to do that. And so make the most of this time. And, it's not a great situation. It's very easy to focus on all the negative.
Not a vacation.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in the process of launching 1, maybe 2 more podcasts, not political. I think I get enough of that. And this is an opportunity right here. Like I said, if you can start a business in this environment, there's nothing that's going to stop you going ahead. And again, that's the advice I've been giving to some people. That idea that you've been sitting on, that business that you've always dreamed about starting, lay the groundwork for it. Put it on paper, start to flesh it out, and as this thing begins to subside, you may be ready to launch it, because honestly, a lot of people out there have lost their jobs. I mean, jobs that they've had for 20 plus years, 15 plus years, and now they find themselves without a job and not knowing what's coming next. Well, you can determine your own destiny, here at this point. And again, if you can launch a business in this environment, then nothing's ever going to stop you from succeeding. So thank you again for watching The Yard Sign. Last words, anybody? Jake?
Cheers.
One day we'll meet again to the Tampa Young Republicans. Everybody that's in the Young Republican groups across the country, we had a nice call at the national level last week. Let's just try and stay active, and let's try and stay on the phones and on Zoom. And again, other than that, everyone stay healthy. Again, it's as the president said, it's going to be a tough week. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks, but again, we'll make it through this.
Michelle.
Yeah, I just want to go off of what Jake said, that it's going to be a tough couple of weeks, or a couple months even. But, we have to remember that America has the best institutions in the world and the best systems in the world. And if any country is in the best situation to make it through this, it's us.
And cheers from Chris.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody. Really, what I really like to promote is use this time for self-betterment. Read some books. Watch your local government. Kind of think about these philosophical issues that we have regarding the balance of power in government and individual freedoms. I really like you were saying, Johnny, just use it for self-improvement. Use it to think things through, and hopefully you all come out on the other side a little bit better.
All right. Thank you again to everybody for watching. We'll see you back again Monday, 7 o'clock here, Facebook Live, YouTube, Periscope. And don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. This has been The Yard Sign. Good night, everybody.